So we're back at the zero turn today. Hopefully we can get this one finished up and out of here today or tomorrow. The last video I made on this, I showed you that this thing was a pretty serious mess. He gave it to me and said he replaced the the carburetor, and he couldn't get it to run. So he thought the ignition coil was bad. Not the ignition coil, I apologize. The starting solenoid, this thing right here. So he bought a new one, and I'm not even sure it's the right one. I don't think it is. So he bought that and asked me to replace it, so I replaced it. But what burned it up was he was jumpering. I know it's hard to see. I'll try to get the camera closer. He was jumpering this to this, so he was shortcutting it with a wire or screwdriver or something, and it burned it up. But it also burned up this black wire here. I've replaced that, so I put in the new ignition coil and I put in the new wire. The old I keep saying ignition coil, starting coil. The old starting coil was burned up. One of the red wires had fallen off because it melted. But as I was testing, I noticed the starter was seized up. So in that last video, I replaced the starter. And when I got all that finished, I was able to get it to start, but not with the key. I had to jump it, is what I had to do. I had to jump the starter from the battery. In order to make sure that it's running correctly, you should be able to hear a click. This is the carburetor right here. The carburetor the carburetor solenoid. This solenoid kicks on or unplugs the gas when you start it. So as you turn the key on, you'll hear it click, and then gas will flow into the carburetor. When you shut it off, shut the engine off, this will close so gas cannot get in the carburetor, and it prevents backfiring. See if we can hear it. Yep, turned on. Turned on. So it seems to me that the key switch is working, otherwise that wouldn't work. So there's something in the wiring somewhere that's bad, and since it would cost more money to try to find what it is that is bad, I suggested to the customer, why don't we put in a little switch, a push button switch. So all you got to do is turn the key on and hit this button. I remember when I was a kid, I think that my grandpa had a tractor, I think, where there was a key, but you also had to have a button that you had to push. So that's what this would work like. Now this button is right here. It's a 50 amp, which is plenty. Most ignition systems is 30 amp. The only thing I don't like about it, these screws are really small, so I won't be able to use a connector. I'm gonna have to strip some wires and throw it, put it in there. See how it does. So I'm going to show you how I jump the starter, and that way we can also see to make sure that it's still running. In that last video you saw that I did get it to run. So you may be able to see that I've hooked the jumper cable, just the red, to the battery. So now I'm going to take the other end of the jumper cable. I'm going to put it here on the starter bolt. There's a nut right over here where the battery actually connects from this starting solenoid. So I'm going to turn the key on. I heard it click. Okay, so I'm going to take the control panel off here. That way I can maybe put a switch over here on this side. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Bugs galore. So I'm thinking, if nothing's in the way, maybe put it right here. Okay, so that's how it's going to look. I got it in there. So now all I got to do is just wire it up. We'll see how that goes. I got to take the wire from the starter, from the starting solenoid, and then the wire from the battery, and hook it up to that switch, the push button switch. Battery cable, so I don't make a lot of sparks and cause any issues, burn anything out. Okay, so now I'm going to remove the starting solenoid. Actually, I'm just going to remove the wires from the starting solenoid. I'm going to leave the starting solenoid there. Okay, so the wire I just disconnected, this one, I'll pull it up here, goes to the starter. So all I'm going to do is run this one over to my button. I bought some extra cable in case this one didn't reach, and it doesn't appear that it's going to, so that's good that I bought some. And then the other one that I'm getting ready to disconnect here comes from the battery. Now this wire controls that carburetor shutoff valve, so we will put this onto the switch also at the same side the battery is on. Okay, it may not be very pretty, but I'm not much on fabricating wire anyways. I'll need to get some zip ties, and then this will be wrapped up. So I'm sure somebody's going to ask me, what'd you do? So this is the starter, and this is the starter wire right here. So we follow the starter wire, and so I put it on one side of the switch, and you see the switch right there, and then you see the other wire, and that runs to the battery. So the only thing the switch does is connects these two wires together. That's all it does. Now there's a third wire here, and I told you that one turns on the carburetor shutoff solenoid. So when I turn the key, it sends power to the solenoid through this battery. Not exactly sure how that works, but it's got to be interconnected in this bundle of wires right here, because that's where it runs into. So I guess no other thing we can do but test it out. So I'm going to turn on the key and let's try it out. So I just shut off the key and it turned off. Man, that was fantastic. That worked like a charm. Okay, so now I'm going to plate back over everything here. Make sure everything fits okay. It does. Okay, I'm going to test it one more time just to make sure that nothing changed after putting the cover on. Well, by golly, I think it works. So I'm a little bit afraid that this thing doesn't drive. I don't know if he knows that or not. I don't think he does. I'm gonna check out. I'm sure he doesn't want to spend any more money on it. So I'm gonna check it out now. We're gonna get on it and see if I can get anything to operate. We'll take the brick off, which is always fun. Yeah, I need some zip ties. So it would seem that there's a problem with the hydraulics. The mower deck won't go forward or backwards, and it doesn't want to engage the mower deck. I did hear a noise when I tried to engage the mower deck, like something was trying to kick in, but it just didn't. But I don't think he wants to spend any more money on this. I think he's saying he's wanting to sell it now that it's running. So the last thing I have to do is put on this flywheel piece of plastic. That's it, because everything else was off when I got it. That first bolt didn't want to come out for some reason. So he said he wanted to get it running, and it's running. It starts up with a button, just like he said he didn't mind having, so I think everything's the way it should be. So I'm going to give him a call, see what he wants to do. I was just hoping we could drive this over to his house, because it's heavy. I can't get into the truck. I tried to tow it with the lawnmower, and the lawnmower just wouldn't pull it up hills. So he'll have to bring his big old trailer down with a winch, I guess, and get it just like he dropped it off. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was working on this thing. So I hope I can inspire you to do something fun so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.